Hello there, people of the internet. How is everybody doing today? I'm doing alright, thanks for asking. It's a beautiful day out here, roughly 65, not a cloud in the sky. Oh, never mind, there's a cloud over there. Alright, today sucks. Never mind. I'm not doing this video. Nah, I changed my mind on that right quick. Today, I'm continuing my little escapade of exploring all the different kinds of firearms that I own. Today I decided to go ahead and take a look at some of my Italian carbines simply because A, I have ammunition for them, and B, I have several of them, so we can go into some of the history and development of what these Italian rifles have gone through. Alright, now, obviously this one has been sporterized. This right here, I believe, is a sporterized 1891 Carcano. Or Carcano, or however it is that you'd like to pronounce it. I'm going to pronounce it Carcano simply because that's how a majority of people pronounce it, but I've been told that is incorrect. Now, after smokeless powder had been invented by the French in 1886, basically all the major military forces were establishing relatively the same style of firearm. They were all bolt-action rifles, held, 5 or 6 rounds, except for the Enfield, which held 10. But they were all generally the same. They were bolt-action military rifles, held a couple of rounds, fired this new, smokeless powder, and the Italians were no exception. They adopted their Carcano rifles, which are a very, very basic, simple design, mechanically speaking, that operate with a Mannlicher style clip. Anyone who does not know what a Mannlicher style clip is, I'm sure that the people watching this video do already, but just in case somebody doesn't, I'll explain it. Just like with, say a handgun, whenever you have to stick in a magazine into the bottom, you kind of need a secondary bullet holder for these rifles as well. Now, this is not the magazine, this is just a little clip that feeds into the magazine, but we're not going to get into the differences between magazines and clips in this video. But you need that little external clip to feed from the magazine, just like how you need the external feeding device for some other firearms. Or at least that's how I think about it. So you stick your rounds inside the clip, and then the clip itself loads right into the magazine of the gun, and then after you are done firing and you're out of ammunition, the clip actually falls right out the bottom, and that is, well, it's called an in-block clip, meaning the clip itself stays inside the rifle whenever you're firing it. It's a very unique and interesting functionality. Personally, I prefer the internal magazines that have their own feeding lips, so you don't have to fumble around with these clips. Like, if you don't have this little clip right here, this is pretty much a single shot rifle. Not only that, but there's this big hole on the bottom of the magazine, which allows dirt, debris, and all kinds of nonsense to get up in there. And that's not something that you want, especially if you're using this in a fight for your life. But these guns right here were to replace the Italians' Vetterli rifles, which I do not have one. The Vetterli rifles were originally created for black powder pressures, however they did rechamber them to kind of fire the smokeless powder caliber that they were creating. However, it was not designed to handle the smokeless powder pressures, so they did download their ammunition significantly whenever they were loading for the Vetterli. Keep that in mind if you end up getting one of those rifles. But to go along with their brand new shiny 1891 Carcanos, they also developed the 6.5 Carcano cartridge. It's a rimless cartridge. Not exactly a very large round, but not exactly an anemic round either. Honestly, in my opinion, I'd say the 6.5 Carcano round was ahead of its time. It was a light recoiling, we'll call it intermediate round, but it's more on the high end of intermediate round. And this was back in the day when right after right after smokeless powder had become a thing, military technology was still to the point to where they wanted nice, large, heavy projectiles, and they didn't quite understand that a smaller, faster moving projectile with less recoil would actually be more efficient. Now, I would go ahead and fire this rifle on camera for you guys, but unfortunately the firing pin inside of this one is broken. See, in the rifle I'm about to show you guys, whenever I had gotten it from the surplus market, the firing pin in that one was broken. So I swapped firing pins so I could make a video on that rifle, and I just haven't swapped them back yet. I'm probably just going to get a new firing pin to throw into this thing. They're not expensive. They are still made nowadays specifically for people who collect these rifles that don't necessarily want to dump out the money for an original one. Why pay 50 bucks for an original one when if you can get a new one for 10? Now the Italians, just like many other countries, were beginning to see that not everybody needed one of these full-length infantry rifles. So they started issuing shorter carbines, we'll call them carbines. They started issuing shorter carbines to people that weren't necessarily going to be on the front lines. They called them troop special rifles, and they're not special operations forces like that. They're people that were, you know, mortar teams, truck drivers, people that weren't necessarily going to be on the front lines battling the enemy, but they still wanted them to have some sort of form of protection. Now this model right here is the 9124, and these are known to be inaccurate simply because whenever the Italians were making their 1891s, they were using what is called gain twist rifling. This type of rifling speeds up the bullet slowly as it begins to progress down the barrel, meaning the rotation of the bullet would slowly increase as the bullet got further and further down the barrel. Now that works whenever you have an appropriately length barrel, but if you take a barrel with that gain twist rifling and you just kind of cut off the tip of it, you circumcise it, then that bullet is not, that bullet does not spin at the rate of which would normally stabilize it. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of these 9124s, actually all of the 9124s, were just chopped down 1891 rifles. I'm getting a phone call. Give me just a second. Don't you just love sales call? They're trying to give me health insurance. I've already got health insurance. As soon as I told them I've already got health insurance, they just kind of hung up on me. No goodbye, no nothing, just bam, they're gone. All right, back to the video. So anyway, after they circumcised the 1891 rifles, these bullets weren't able to stabilize quite like they would out of the longer length barrels. It is with that lack of stabilization that out to longer distances, these rifles right here have a problem with bullets keyholing, which means the bullet starts to tumble. Normally it would spiral like a football while it's flying through the air. Well, these, they don't spiral quite as well, so they start getting off balance. Now a very similar rifle to this right here is the 1891 Cavalry Carbine, which does not have that problem because the barrels were made from scratch to be a carbine barrel. These right here were, the barrels for these were originally intended for full-length rifles that just kind of got chopped down, and that's why these have problems with bullet stabilization versus the carbines, the Cavalry Carbines, which do not necessarily have that problem. Alright, well, let's fast forward a little bit. After the First World War, right into the Second World War, the Italians were looking around at what everybody else was using, and they had taken a notice that their little 6.5 cartridge was a little bit anemic. It was not quite cutting what they wanted it to do. The problem with a 6.5 round, other than its lack of power in comparison to these other larger caliber cartridges, is that if you are loading it for, say, machine gun fire or aircraft fire, and you want to stick explosives, incendiaries, tracer components into these rounds, a 6.5 round does not necessarily have a lot of capacity to be able to hold that kind of stuff. So they did try to upgrade their rounds to a 7.35 caliber cartridge or a true 30 caliber cartridge. This right here would have solved a lot of their problems, logistically speaking, if a little conflict known as the Second World War didn't pop up. Now this right here is the Model 38 because in 1938 they tried issuing these rifles to their soldiers, jammed in the new 7.35 cartridge. However, to try and give your soldiers new rifles with new ammunition right as this fresh World War was starting up, the Italians immediately regretted their decision. So they tried issuing some people with 7.35 rifles, some people with 6.5, that became a whole nightmare because the rifles look very, very similar and the rounds look very, very similar. Like, people were getting the wrong kinds of ammunition and people were loading the wrong kinds of ammunition into their rifles, and it's understandable. If you have people who don't necessarily know a lot about their rifles other than how to, you know, aim and shoot and load, I could understand how these two rifles would be confused with one another. So around 1940, they eventually decided to themselves, hey, 7.35 is a really, really bad idea for now. Let's go back to 6.5. So they ended up going back to 6.5. As a result, these 7.35 rifles were only made for a couple of years. Now, after the Second World War, can I help you, good sir? This right here is one of those, what we call assassin bugs. Their stings are extraordinarily painful, and they liquefy the insides of their prey, and this is a very big one. I'm gonna go ahead and let this bastard go over here, quite far away from me. After the Second World War, assuming I'm not attacked by something again, after the Second World War, the Italians ended up giving a lot of these rifles as aid to the Finnish. If you ever get your hands on an M38, look for a little SA on the receiver right there, on the end of the barrel, and that right there indicates Finnish property. Most of these rifles were in Finnish property whenever they were surplused. I'm also going to point out that they did simplify the rear sights on these rifles. The Italians saw the distances the combat was being fought over, and they didn't want to put in a lot of time and effort and machine work into making these complex sights that they were making, so they just gave their soldiers these rifles, which had a 200 meter zero. I believe it's meters with the Italians, might be yards at that time, but I'm like 99.9% sure it's meters. And it worked well enough. If your target was closer than 200 yards, then your bullet was going to fire a little bit high. If it was further away, it'd fire a little bit low. Kentucky windage, you'd make it work. For the most part, at the distances they were fighting at, these right here worked very, very well. After they decided to go back to the 6.5 cartridge, they did continue to make these rifles in 6.5. However, they progressed to making a Model 41 rifle, which I do not have to show you guys, rechambered in 6.5, which had a more complex sight on it, very similar to this gun, just with a far more complex sight. Now, all these guns have the same exact action. The only thing that's really different about them is the stocks, the caliber that they're chambered in, and the length of the barrel. Besides that, the actual functionality of the firearm is the same. Now, there's a lot of models that I did not include with what we were covering here, simply because I covered the models that I have, along with some others that I don't have, but I didn't get into depth with them. The Italians made a lot of different model Carcanos, and just like with the British and their models of Enfield, to try and cover all of them would just take a massive amount of time. So I kind of went over everything as quickly as possible. I covered a lot of the big development, but there was a lot of little stuff in there that I did not cover. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into the personal history of these rifles. This right here is a good, cheap, comfortable little rifle. I think I picked this thing up for like 125 bucks a good while ago. It has worked very well. The firing pin in it, technically speaking, the firing pin in this one was fine. I just swapped it over to another Carcano because that Carcano's firing pin was busted. But typically, if I'm going out, not necessarily to hunt, but if I'm going out camping or into the wilderness somewhere and I might want to grab some game while I'm there, I'll just kind of throw this thing into my trunk. It's nothing special. It's been sporterized. I'm not really worried about dinging it up or scratching it up. Since it's so cheap, I'm not really worried about it getting broken or rusty or anything like that. But besides that, it's a good, comfortable little shooter. Now, this right here is a bit of an indication on this rifle previously being an 1891 model versus it being made from a carbine that was already pre-existing. First off, the rear sight is an 1891 rear sight. On the carbines that were already pre-existing, the sights are actually considerably smaller. Second, the bolt handle is straight and very sticky. Your carbines of this time, their bolt handles were curved, as you will see from the rifles I'll be showing you shortly. This one right here is a 1917 production, tourney made 6.5 Italian Carcano. Nothing real special about it, but it is comfortable and fun to use. Alright, this one right here I got off of Bud's Gun Shop. This right here is a 9124 Troop Special model, so this right here does have the gain twist rifling that was cut down. So it is inaccurate up to longer distances. I mean, I shoot this thing from, we're sitting at about 50 yards, I stepped out to about 100. I made shots on target, no problem. I mean, it wasn't exactly one MOA shots, but they hit their target, so for a battle rifle, this right here would work. Well, maybe not modern day, but it would work if you were given this back whenever these were being issued. Besides that, there's nothing special about it. On the back of the stock right there, we got serial number along with H1, HI, I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of worn, kind of hard to read. I don't see any military cartouches anywhere, so I'm going to be led to believe that they were either scrubbed off or that this gun is just worn to the point to where they are no longer existing. This right here is very, very similar to my 1891, but I believe that this right here is a little bit more of a comfortable rifle to shoot, simply because it has the full stock on it, so it has a little bit more weight. The 6.5 cartridge is already a comfortable cartridge to shoot, which is why I don't mind shooting it out of my little sporterized Carcano right there. But whenever you add more weight to it, it becomes even more pleasurable. I will say that this one right here is less accurate than my sporterized 1891, simply because, although it doesn't show up very well on camera, I don't believe that this is a model 9124 that's been sporterized. The bolt is a very good indication of that, but I think that somebody cut down the barrel of an 1891 because this barrel is in fact longer than the barrel on my 9124 by several inches. And that little bit of extra rifling really does seem to help out this rifle with bullet stabilization, because I can make hits out at long ranges with this thing very easily. However, I am not 100% certain as to what model this rifle was, but with the clues I have, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that it's an 1891 that's been sporterized. Alright, this right here is actually a really cool little rifle. I got this before the surplus of them came into the United States, so I picked this up for a little bit more than I would have liked to. This right here was from a private sale, but I got this from a buddy of mine, and then the ammo fiasco of 2020 hit, and I was not able to find any ammunition for this thing anywhere. These guns were imported by the surplus from Ethiopia, so a lot of people were buying 7.35 ammo, and there's not a lot of it on the market anyway, so the only ammo I have for this is original 1939 ammunition that actually came with these rifles, which is pretty cool, but they're all hang fires and occasional duds. Like, they don't work very well at all. Now, one thing I do really like about this rifle right here is somebody had carved their name into the back of the stock right here. I asked my Italian friend about it. They said it's pronounced Evo, A-I-V-O, or A-I-V-U. But yeah, they said it's pronounced Evu, and they said it is a Sicilian name. Very, very popular Sicilian name. So that's cool to know. Although you cannot see it, you can kind of see the remains of a military cartouche on the back of this buttstock. And unlike my other Carcanos, the back of the barrel on this one is actually rounded versus the hexagonal shape that the other ones have. If ammo was a little bit more available, this right here would probably be my favorite out of my Carcanos. But because ammo is pretty much non-existent for this thing right now, which will hopefully change as ammo becomes more available, I think that my favorite is still going to be my sporterized 1891. Alright, well, I think I have yammered on long enough about these guns. Let's go ahead, throw on some earmuffs, lob some lead, and have a good time. Now the 6.5 and the 7.35 each take the same exact Carcano clip, which did help with logistics, but not enough. And since ammo is non-existent for the 7.35s, which is what I'll be firing first, I'm only going to fire 2 rounds from it. This is original 1939 ammunition that we're going to be lobbing downrange to. But there we go. The clip just goes right into the gun, although I'm fairly certain that you guys know that. Now, these are going to be hang fires and or duds, so don't expect me to actually hit anything. I'm going to see if I can hit my thing right there. That is a dud. Now, I know I flinch whenever I fire these rounds because firing ammo that I know is going to be either hang fires or duds, it just makes me really, really nervous. Alright, well, I guess I'm just going to fire 1 round. And the clip just fell on the bottom of the gun. If I knew I'd be firing 1 round, I wouldn't have bothered loading the clip in there. Let's fire this bastard. Hey, that one fired pretty good. Like I said, some of these rounds, they won't even shoot, but others, that was all right. That was pretty good. That one did fire a little high. I was kind of aiming for my steel silhouette out there, but at the same time, I just wanted to make the rifle go off. Alright, my sporterized 1891, unfortunately I cannot fire because the firing pin is broken. So I'll just pretend to shoot it. Bang! 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 Don't complain about me dry firing this thing. Firing pin's already busted. And the beauty about doing that is the ammo's nice and cheap. Alright, now let's fire a gun that's actually functioning right now. This right here is modern production PPU ammo. Very, very nice stuff. Little on the expensive side right now, but hey, I gotta make videos, so I'm gonna go ahead and fire 3 rounds of this because this is something that I can actually get, unlike the 7.35. I wish PPU would make 7.35 ammo already. Same exact clip as the last one. Now this 9124 is a little on the sticky side, so I might not be able to cycle the bolt as easily. But that being said, let's go ahead and lob some lead. Well, that one cycled all right. There we go. Since this right here, the rear sight on this, the main battle sight, is rated out to 300 yards. It does fire pretty significantly high, so I'm kind of aiming at the ground, trying to hit my target. We'll see how well that works. Now, watch the clip pop out of the bottom of the gun. There it goes. Look at that. All right, this is my last round. I gotta aim like 1.5 feet under that freaking target, I swear. Into space with ya. This is a very, very nice little rifle. I know I like it. I hope you guys, if you have one, you like it as well. I think I'm gonna take all the 7.35 ammo that didn't fire, and I'm going to pull the rounds off, see if I can find some brass to load these into, and I don't know, maybe I'll see if I can get them to fire a little more reliably. I'll play around with it. Alright, well guys, thanks for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel, because as you can see from the car down there, I do this kind of stuff all the time. And boy, oh boy, do I have some really cool videos coming. I got myself a whole bunch of new stuff coming in. Ammo's hard to find right now, but firearms are beginning to get more readily available on the market. Although they are more expensive, they are definitely more available. So I got some cool stuff coming in. Stay tuned for that. If you like the video, actually like the video, YouTube's anti-gun right now, so every like, every subscription, every share definitely helps out. Look at the description down below. You're going to find a link to social medias, Discord, my second channel where I get drunk and play video games, etc., etc. Patreon where I do Q&As and whatnot. I might have some other stuff down there that I'm forgetting as well. But anyway, I'm going to go grab something else to shoot because I'm having a really good time out here. It's a beautiful day out. And it's still pretty early, so I'm going to make like several videos today. You guys go off, have a fantastic day, and thanks for watching. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.